She's looking at me. Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I was just saying that Sita's looking at me. Catherine thinks it's because she likes me. It's really because she observed me eating food in my office right before I came down here. So she's hoping I still have some with me. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to this Sunday where we talk about and really think about the baptism of Christ. This is Baptism of Christ Sunday, hence the beautiful waterfall that Lori has created for us and these water fixtures up here. And throughout the service, I want you to think about, and we talk about this a lot, but really think about what it means, what water means to you and in our faith life. Think about words that you would use to describe how you feel when you think about that, because I'm pretty sure it's going to come up in the sermon. So, hint, yeah, there's a quiz. So let's take a moment and just sit back and be in the space together, remembering that this is a safe space, a holy space, a loving space. And let's take this time to remind each other, as we do every week, that no matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, I am welcome here.
We're going to do something a little new today. Already going, no. We're going to do all the verses of the song. The third verse, the choir is going to sing a cappella. And then the fourth verse, all of you get to sing loud and clear, because I think I've waited a long enough time to hear all of your voices. And if you need help, I'll help you. Don't be afraid to sing Shane Creola. Don't be afraid to lift your voice. Not that I would point anybody out, but I did see, I told them, there are rocks up here, and I'm not beyond throwing one if I see that someone's not singing.
Note, I suggested the water, but...
So we're going to try that, okay? Perfect.
Let us build a house where love can dwell and all can safely live. A place where saints and children dwell, all hearts learn to forgive. Build of hopes and dreams and visions, rock of faith and vault of grace. Here the love of Christ shall end divisions. All are welcome, all are welcome, all are welcome in this place. Let us build a house where prophets speak and words are strong and true, where
All are well?
Yes.
To the reverse.
Okay. Our sacred reading today is from Matthew chapter 3. And as most of you know, whenever I'm reading, I just can't help it, but I have to give the backstory. Last week, we celebrated Epiphany, the coming of the wise men, where Jesus was shown to the non-Jewish world, the Gentiles as such. Mary and family leave Bethlehem, go to Egypt. When Herod is dead, they come back to Nazareth. This is what comes. All right, the next chapter is Matthew 3. All of a sudden, we're almost 30 years down the road. And here is John the Baptizer coming out of the desert of Judea. I'm trying to picture this guy that they say ate honey and locusts, what he must have looked like. Was his hair out like this? And how did the people, he said many, many people were following him, wanting to be baptized. And so he's baptizing them in the Jordan River. And many, many, many people came, and he's saying, this is to change your life because the kingdom of God is here. So even the Pharisees and the Sadducees came because they thought it would look good. Maybe they didn't really believe in it, but they were there to be baptized the same way. And then, now we get to our reading. Then Jesus appeared, and I'm reading out of the Message today. Then Jesus appeared, arriving at the Jordan River from Galilee. He wanted John to baptize him, meaning Jesus. John objected. I'm the one who needs to be baptized, not you. But Jesus insisted, do it. God's work, putting things right all these centuries, is coming together right now in this baptism. So John did it. The moment Jesus came up out of the baptismal waters, the skies opened up and he saw God's Spirit. It looked like a dove, descending and landing on him. And along with the Spirit, a voice. This is my Son, chosen and marked by my love, delight of my life. May God bless our reading and hearing of this.
Thanks, Connie. That's why I call her the Reverend Dr. Connie Blinn. Because in all seriousness, she works hard at her readings and gives us that important backstory. Because as we come into this story, we hear what must have looked like an interesting sight, John emerging from these waters and doing these baptisms. What do you imagine John looks like in this scene?
Damn.
What's that?
Damn. He's wet.
Ken went very literal there, yes. He's clearly wet. He's in the Jordan River doing baptisms. And I wish Monica was here a year or two ago. She was actually standing in the Jordan River and could give that description. But he's clearly wet. What else do you picture in this scene?
Young adult, middle-aged, Middle Eastern man.
Yes, young adult, Middle Eastern man. And as Connie pointed out, just last week we were celebrating 3 wise men bringing gifts to baby Jesus. Now we're only a week later, but Jesus is like 30 years old now. Happens fast. They grow up so fast, don't they? In a blink of an eye, right. So here's Jesus having this this passage in Matthew is basically our ability to eavesdrop into this conversation between John and Jesus. Now, Jesus had been used to talking in front of very large crowds by this point of his life. And so, he's used to being what? When he didn't have a microphone, so he's used to having to project, right? And speak to these crowds. But this is a very intimate conversation he's having with John. It's a very quiet conversation. And what is so important about this conversation? What does Jesus say to John when John offers to baptize Jesus? Pardon me. Gary.
Well, John, I think, appears to be humble, thinking he's so much more important than I am. He doesn't need to be baptized.
Right. And then on the other side of the coin, we see Jesus humbling himself, right? John's the baptizer. That's what he does. And Jesus says, no, you are to baptize me. And so the words I wrote down as I was thinking about that, as I walked up here, were magnificence and humility. Magnificence and humility. So here's Jesus. He is this going around being this wise prophet, trying to teach the people anyone who will listen to him. He's trying to say, this is not how things should be. This oppression, this violence, this is not how things should be. This is what God is intending us to be and what to do and how to live. And so he's used to this sort of magnificent, also he's the Son of God and all of that. But he says, no, it's your job. I need you to baptize me. Bless you, Mary Lou. How would you think, taking both of these individuals apart, in that moment, how do you think John might have felt when Jesus says that? Inadequate? Confused? How else? Not worthy.
Why on earth are you coming to me?
Why on earth are you coming to me? Can't you do this yourself? That's a legitimate question, right? Yes.
John had been preaching, it's not me, I'm just leading the way for the person coming after me.
Yes.
But what Jesus was saying was, I'm here. I don't know that's what Jesus was saying, but when in my brain, like by Jesus saying, you still have a job to do.
Yeah.
I think of that with us. Christ came, we still have jobs to do.
That's right.
We all have jobs to do.
Yes.
We can't just let that carry it.
That's right. Ken.
When I look on that scene, I think, well, this is part and parcel of Jesus. Jesus is always led by example.
Right.
All right? Why is this any different?
Right. And this is also Jesus teaching us another way of serving each other, right? So, before I moved to the whole imagery of the water, serving one another, and, when we take, so our two holy sacraments in the United Church of Christ and the Protestant Church in general are what? Baptism and communion. Both very holy acts, very solemn acts. For once in what seems like 15 years now, I'm not in an alb this season. Whew. But why do I wear that alb when we do communion? Because, yes, out of my deep respect for that sacrament and what it means to serve each other. And what do I do when I'm finished serving all of you and I come up here with whoever's lay reader that week? What does the lay reader then do for me? Serves me, right. And that's how we do that act. In large churches, they accomplish that by passing the trays down the pews, right? I'm now serving you. I'm now serving you, right? That's what's happening here. This is another story of Jesus teaching us, no, John, this is your job. This is what you should do. I am humble to have you do it. And John says, I'm too humble to do it. So they're in this conflict. So ultimately it happens, right? And John baptizes Jesus. So during our welcome this morning, I asked you to think about those images of water that you have and what those mean. And And I can't help but think of, and obviously we just talked about baptism. There's another powerful thing that Jesus does toward his death that we, in some churches, practice during the week of Lent, typically on Maundy Thursday. What is that spiritual act that we do sometimes? Washing feet, right. Why?
Serving, humbling.
We're humbling ourselves. We're serving others just as Jesus did. That is something that Jesus did constantly as an act of honor to someone else, as an act of service to someone else. What do you need to wash feet? Water. Cleanses. So when I asked you to think about those images of water, what words came to mind?
Make clean.
To make clean.
New beginning.
A new beginning.
Mixing.
Mixing. How so?
Well, water is used for food preparation.
Yeah.
Water is a great, everybody jumps in the pool.
Yeah.
Water is not only a solvent and a cleaner, but it's a mixer.
Right. Beth.
When I think about the desert and water, I think about how things can seem all calm, and you add water to it, and these things spring to life.
Right.
And that, because often I think of water as a very peaceful, over time, smoothing thing. But in the desert, it comes and everything kind of explodes.
Right.
And I think that's kind of what happened after the baptism.
Yeah. Well, that's a perfect example. So water in the desert makes things happen very quickly. And what happened after Jesus was baptized by John? The sky opened up. And there was an image of what? A dove. What does the image of a dove bring? What is that a sign of? Peace. Peace. Bob.
I think for me too is water means life.
Yeah.
Scientists, when they're looking for life in the universe, are looking for water because they know life takes water to start. And
Right.
keep it going. It's really interesting how important water is.
You're right, and you watch, if you're a space geek of any sort, I know we have a couple of us in here, at least, and you watch, if you watch anything from NASA, that's what the satellites and these amazing things they're shooting out to the other planets are looking for, is signs of life, signs of water, signs of the ability to have habitation there. And water is such a source of life. Just this morning I was, you're aware, I'm assuming, of the catastrophic fires taking place in Australia. And with that, you see acts of kindness out on social media. And one this morning that I watched was, again, because I have a special place in my heart for animals, like people and animals, somewhere in there. I love you all, but so anyhow, there's this man who is going through these forests or whatnot, and trying to provide water, the source of life, to animals. And so here he is. He's carrying around with him basically a small porcelain sink, just for the simple purpose. I would think that there's something lighter, but this is what he's carrying around, probably because it can be protected from fire and heat. And so and it has a stopper. So he fills it up, and here he is with this large koala bear. And of course you're watching and you're like, oh, it's so cute, I just want to pet it. But he's giving this koala bear's not interested in the water he put in the basin of this sink. So he starts letting the koala bear drink right out of the water bottle. And gives the koala bear a break, and the koala bear didn't want a break. And so with its right hand, the koala bear kind of reached for the bottle to like say, hey, I'm not done. And so the guy starts feeding it again with his left hand. But the koala bear takes its left hand, puts it on the man's right hand, and just holds it. It was right. That was my reaction too, like, oh. But that is, as Bob said, that is the source of life. That is life-giving. And so if you look at water separately from a cleansing issue, separately from a faith issue, and look at it from a justice issue, are we great about protecting water or providing water to all? No. No, we're not. What's that, Hannah? Water justice is a thing for a reason. And in fact, in so many ways, haven't we seen in the last number of years water justice taking a front seat to what food insecurity and food injustice used to be? Not a couple hours away in Flint, Michigan, still don't have clean water. Don, you're from up in that region.
And Lansing, actually, they are a water company, and they actually reached out to Flint to give them their technical expertise to help them solve the problem.
Right. And that's what it takes is people with the knowledge to go and do. There's an organization, which I can't remember because you know how I am, that both collects funds, but a lot of students go on mission trips over to areas. Say it. Engineers Without Borders. Yeah, that's not the one I was thinking of, but that is a good one too. They go and they build water wells and sources of water so that.
Is it called Living Water?
Living Water is the one I was thinking of, and that is in those communities that you hear about where. The women primarily are walking, long distances away from their homes just to get a little water back to their home, just to have some clean water to drink for their children, maybe use it in a meal, and bathing comes way later. Hygiene comes way later. So water is a justice issue. Water is a faith issue. Water is a spiritual issue. Water is the source of life. So what else comes to mind when we think about water? What other descriptive words or feelings do you get when you think about water or baptism? The new beginning.
When I think of water, I think power after this talk, because if you can control one of those wells in one of those communities,
You have all the power.
all the power.
Right. So if you couldn't hear Hannah, she's saying when she thinks about water, as a result of this conversation, and I'm sure many others that you've had knowing you, Hannah, is that is a source of great power. If you can control people's lives by controlling the water source or livelihood, you control it all. I don't think that's what was intended for us. Bob?
I think of water as being very persistent. Anytime I'm working on a project where water is involved, if I'm challenging it, I'm going to lose.
Yeah.
You either have to divert it or fix it, or you will lose if you're fighting water.
And we've never had that issue in this building.
My whole life. But the best part about it, too, and the good part about it, is it's so persistent. Like baptism to me is like the persistence of God's
Yes.
love. So that even though you don't feel it or you don't think about it,
Yeah.
it's there anyway.
It's still there.
It's like a parent, like you may not feel it, you don't think they don't love you, but they love you.
You're exactly right. And Pat?
Baptism is symbolic of when you go down in the water, you're casting off your old life. When you're coming out of the water, you're taking on the life and identity of Christ.
Yeah. Yeah. It is so symbolic and so beautiful. And here there are different types of baptism, right? How many of you were baptized as an infant, as a child? Many of you. How many were baptized later in your life? Or some of you may have been baptized more than once. So this is our baptismal font up here. And for those of you who don't know, this church, this congregation is now, if we were 100 years in 2014, what are we now? 106. So this congregation used to be in downtown Canton in a very large building, and a highway was being built, and we moved here in 1960, right? 1966, somewhere around there.
That's when they started building this.
Yeah, but this is a baptismal font that was given as a gift in 1920, I believe the plaque says under here. And if you have a chance today after the service, come up and just lift the top lid up a little bit and feel the weight of this marble. This thing isn't going anywhere. But I love it because I think of how many people have been baptized using this beautiful font. And the stories of each set of parents or grandparents for infant baptisms. I think of adults that have not had the opportunity to be baptized early in their life and have had that opportunity later. And I think of how it takes on a different meaning for each and every person. You know, babies, they may not get the chance to decide whether they want to be baptized, right? And later in their life, they may decide maybe that wasn't for them. So they get the chance of going through confirmation in the UCC anyways. And maybe they don't want to confirm their baptism, but maybe they do. Adults, it's different because, or teenagers or youth, because they're making a decision in a way. But the look on someone's face when they're baptized, at least for me as someone who's had the honor to perform that act a number of times, it's so different for each one. I mean, babies, they all kind of do the same thing. They're like, "What are you sprinkling on my forehead?" Right, I was perfectly asleep. But I've had the opportunity to baptize a few adults who, for one reason or another, weren't able to be baptized throughout their lives, even though they wanted to be. Maybe it was because their church wouldn't baptize them because of who they were or who they loved, or for whatever reason it was. And then they were able to have that experience and live out their faith fully in their minds. And that is such a gift, I believe, that God gave us to live out our faith through the sacraments of baptism and communion, where we get to sort of remind ourselves of what this is all about, why we do what we do, why we can take those adjectives we're using for water and go out into the world and live them, to refresh those who need it, to serve others, to be love, to share God's love with all who we meet, no matter what, no matter who they are, no matter where they're from, no matter whether they're rich or poor, no matter the color of their skin, no matter the faith they practice or having different beliefs or no faith beliefs. And no matter who they love, we're able to go out there and make a difference by living our faith, reminding ourselves of our baptismal vows, and being the children of God that we were intended to be. So let's continue to do that. Continue to remind yourselves of the feeling of knowing that you were baptized in the same way or in a different way maybe, than Jesus was, but with the same love that came behind that act of service that John did for Jesus. Amen? Amen.